It was a Saturday morning when we had gone hunting for Bigfoot. The sky was overcast and gray, making my mood perfectly until we pulled over on the side of the old highway. The moment I popped the trunk and slid my hand over the wooden stock of my grandfather's rifle, though, my focus returned. I cocked the gun in sync with the spark of rage that flared within the depths of my belly. I looked to my brother Darren, who had also taken his weapon in hand, although with noticeably lesser intent. "Come on, Darren, enough sulking. You know what we need to do." Yeah, I know." He slammed the trunk shut and slung his bag over his right shoulder, keeping the rifle in both his hands as he trudged past me towards the woods. "Let's just get this over with." His exasperation was on full display. It sickened me. I simply followed along, having nothing left to say, our boots squished in the softened surface of the forest floor, following that ATV trail deeper into the wild. The smell of wet grass and rotting logs was overwhelming, only to become sickening once it meshed with the stink of the swamp, but the smell would not deter us. We followed the swamp's edge, keeping the water to our right. Our eyes, however, were constantly surveying the area, searching for any signs of ancient ape, or perhaps signs of its victims. There wouldn't be anything left of Dad. We had already been out here countless times before, ever since the creature had taken him. Darren still refused to believe in his brother, let alone his eyes, but I knew that we had seen that day, a dad taking his own preteen sons on a fishing trip, having a great fun in the sun. It was the first time I had ever actually caught anything, which was still better than how Darren was doing. At one point, my kid brother started crying after one fish broke his line, and my dad chose to console him. And as he did that, the shadow came. I watched it approach from its cover amongst the tree line. Slow but steadily, when I pointed it out to him, Dad took a quick look before telling us that we need to start walking away from the bear. Backwards with care. We all had our eyes on the shadow. We were all able to see when it dropped to all fours and began sprinting towards us. Dad told us to run back to the car as he pulled out his pocket knife, trying to stand as tall and wide as he could to scare it off. Darren was crying in fear, so I had to pull him away, but that didn't stop me from watching. Soon enough, the beast was in front of my father, and back standing on two legs. It sure as hell wasn't a bear. If anything, it was rotted out a gorilla that hadn't skipped the leg day. It bottled out of the sun with its stature, looming over several feet over our dad. Darren and I had gotten to a safe distance where the beast didn't see us, but I could sure see them. I wanted to cry for Dad to run, to scream at him to get out of there, but my throat closed up, choked by the fear as I watched him stumble back. The knife dropped out of his hand, and the monster roared in his face, revealing a set of flesh-ripping fangs. After that, my eyes were transfixated on the monster beating my father into a bloody pulp. Unable to avert my own gaze, it swung its body around wildly, slamming my father against the tree and rock ground alike. I would have assumed that thing was usually using my dad as a plaything, if it hadn't been for the pure feeling of rage that it exuded. Even to us up the hill, my throat had begun to muster some small, short cries as I witnessed the beast digging the corpse back into that hellhole it's called its home. I distinctly remember the size of its hand, almost large enough to wrap around the entire length of my father's lower leg, the only leg he was left anyways. A good while after they had disappeared, I led Darren back to the car, and with the shot and tears dribbling over the screen, I called Mom. I was finally able to utter something that resembled a word. "Help!" The police had found the leg of the beast tore off a few days later, floating in the swamp, and the footprints fit all the proportions too. But the police ruled that we had just seen a bear attack, and the footprint sizes were due to the bear's paws spreading out in the mud. I didn't buy it. I never would, and now as a grown man, I return to these woods every weekend just to get revenge. Looking down at the ground, I stopped dead in my tracks. "Darren, over here!" My younger brother came sprinting back to me as I grinned and pointed. The same enormous footprints we had seen only a few occasions. What did I tell ya? Jacob, they're the same prints from before. We've been over this. Those are... Don't say it again, I growled. Darren was far more willing just to confirm whatever the nice police officers had told him. Because it was easier to listen. It was easier just to pretend what happened was something normal and not our father being murdered by a Sasquatch. Do you see the pattern of pads? This is not a bear's foot, and it ain't one of our boots. That's the footprint of our Bigfoot. Darren just sighed and stood up. Come on, let's just lay the traps already, and you're on the first watch. It's way too early for me to deal with your crazy mess. Grumbling, I picked up and pulled off my pack off and ruffled through its contents until I found the jaws. In one swift but heavy motion, I tossed my bag over towards my brother, which contained our leg traps. He cried out as a steel slammed against his shin. Ow, what's wrong with you? Darren was always an infant, weak as it for every reason. I dragged him out of there each weekend, hoping now we would see the beast and confronting it would toughen him up and it finally gives us the closure we desperately needed. Hey, you asked for them! A rumble sounded through the trees. We both instantly grabbed our rifles and began scanning our surroundings, trying to catch some kind of movement. My guard only began to lower as a raindrop crashed right into the right lens of my glasses, warping half of my vision heavily. Just thunder, I murmured, putting my rifle down and cleaning my glasses. Prep the traps and come back over here quickly. We'll only be out there for a little bit today, I guess. Darren just groaned and snatched up the trap, storming away from me. With my vision fixed for a moment, I inspected my rifle and began to download it. If we were going to come across Bigfoot today, it would have to be soon. It wouldn't be caught wandering around in the storm. The creature was smarter than that. I watched as Darren's figure grew hidden amongst the thin trees, wandering along our pre-established boundary to set the traps. Today we were trying cow livers as bait. We had been rotating the meat to see if any of them would have a better chance of attracting it. Darren thought it was just as expensive waste, but after just trying to venison for 2 years straight with no results, something needed to change. By the time Darren was returning to our lookout spot, a thin mist had begun to fill the forest. The cold pierced through my sweater, so I was forced to zip up my puffer coat and keep warm. When he arrived, he tossed my bag back at me and plunked himself down with his back turned to me. I could hear the crinkling of his morning breakfast bar and groaned. You should be ready to kill that thing at any moment, not snacking. You're completely deluded, you know that? I didn't bother responding. Darren's mind was all too well made up at this point, and no amount of convincing or conversation would change it. Only the cold stone corpse of the Sasquatch would make him see the truth now. For a moment I wondered what Sasquatch meat would taste like to myself. The rumblings of thunder grew more consistent, and the mist had thickened as we sat and waited. I was constantly having to wipe my glasses to clean or remain vigilant, and how it blinded me from water and fogging like. After a little while, it was my turn to check on the traps. Brushing off the mud and leaves, I trotted through the bush, checking all the traps' positions, and as usual, Darren had completely mucked up all the placements. The lazy prick, so it was left to me to adjust to them, moving them to spots were slightly more hidden, so it wasn't blatantly obvious to the beast that was being hunted. Muttering under my breath, I fixed up each trap and just moved on, until the fourth trap of 5. The cow liver was not there, but the trap had not closed shut, and the mud around the area was stomped and squished in various ways. The tingle of anticipation began to hurry my heartbeat, and I just stared at the device before calling out to Darren. Hey Darren, you put the livers on all the traps, yeah? Yes, Jake, I don't need your... Thunder rolled again, but I had heard enough from my brother to get my answer. I began to make my way back to our outpost, walking backwards at first and surveying the surroundings. Once I was certain no eyes were watching me from beyond my view, I raced back to my brother and slid back behind him, Darren began shouting at me and demanding me to know what was wrong, but I shushed him quickly. "Something took the liver on the trap 4, I whispered, trying to hide my simultaneous excitement and fear. "So, it could have been just some hungry bear for all we know, or a coyote, or whatever kind of animal among the hundreds that live in the woods." Darren was expressing annoyance with me, but he was whispering. He had to put in his part, believing that something was out there. I ignored his sentiments and grinned. "We gotta set up the trap. We aren't going anywhere." We all made our way to the site near a trio of young trees, shaped in a triangle so we could easily create a tarp roof if the weather was just not in our favor. And the way that the rain was beginning to cut through the fog, we decided just to do that. Beneath the tarp, we continued our watch as water poured down from before our eyes. Darren continued to whine that we should leave before we get struck by lightning, but I refused. The missing meat from the trap was already a sign that we needed to stay. In all of our time out here, only twice before had the meat been taken, and both times the trap had been shut. We both had never caught anything actually stuck in the traps. The beast mocked us, taunting us, wanting us to know that it was not just some random creature of the woods. It was greater than that. Time passed. The sky boomed above us. I gave myself a moment to imagine that we were just soldiers in Vietnam, hunkering down in the rain, but staying awake in the case of a sudden enemy attack. I was pulled from the fog by my hand on my shoulder, whipping my head around. I saw Darren starting to get up. "I need to stretch my legs, gonna go check the traps." He started to leave, but then turned back and looked at me. "We really should get going soon. The weather is awful." I shook my head without a word. Darren opened his mouth to say something else, but just gave up and left. Huddling with my rifle, I shivered profusely in my cold, wet clothing. My hand was nearly frozen in place, clasped around the barrel. I could feel my knuckles locking up in their sockets. The crack of lightning was erupted nearby. I witnessed a flash from the trees. The rain began to fall faster, hitting the leafy forest floor like bullets from the heavens. I could feel my senses begin to all overwhelmed by the sensations of the wild. "Ah!" A scream I provoked in his direction and readied my rifle. It sounded like Darren, but I couldn't see him between the rain and my fogged glasses. I wiped them off quickly and looked again. There, it was still blurry, but there was no denying it. A large black figure was raising its hands above its head and slamming down onto the ground, attacking my poor brother, who was likely being beaten on the ground by it. Out of my sight, I was not going to let Bigfoot take another member of my family. The rage was ignited. I ripped a bullet off my belt and slammed it into the chamber, then shoved the bolt towards and took my aim. The beast was still slamming on the ground. Maybe the trap had caught it in place. There was no time to waste. The crosshairs were aligned with its chest. I pulled the trigger without hesitation, and the gunshot echoed throughout the trees, louder than any thunderbolt had previously. The bullet was a direct hit. I watched with widened eyes as the Sasquatch fell, clutching his chest before crumbling slowly to the ground. I scrambled to my feet, slipping and tripping in the mud and grass. My fingers screamed out in pain as I pulled myself past multiple trees, hurtling from the cold. I kept the gun close to my side in case the job wasn't done. But finally, after all these years, I'd finally struck the back and avenged my father. I had slain Bigfoot. When I reached the spot where Sasquatch had fallen over, however, there was no beastly corpse, no massive but muddy footprints imprinting on the last path. I found my only brother collapsed face first into the mud, with his blood mixed into a form of foul sludge beneath his body.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.